my dearest, my darling Carmilla, I cannot think of all this without agitation. The unspeakable horror which, years after my deliverance, continues to make my days and nights dreadful, and solitude an unbearable terror. The Baron took up his abode in Graz, living upon a mere pittance, all that remains to him of the once princely estates of his family, the Wardenbergs, and devoted himself to the investigation of vampirism. He had many great works on the subject. I remember only a few, only those which he lent to my father. He became an authority on the condition of the vampire. The deathly pallor attributed to these revenants, he says, is mere melodramatic fiction. In the grave, and when they show themselves in human society, they give the appearance of healthy life. Like the Countess, he says. Like you, my dearest. Though in their coffins they breathe, their hearts beat, their limbs are supple. They are renewed by daily slumber in the grave. No one knows how they escape from their graves and return to them every day without displacing the clay or leaving any signs of disturbance. I wish I could ask you, my sweet, but it is too late. They are prone to be fascinated by particular persons with an engrossing vehemence resembling the passion of love. With inexhaustible patience and strategy, by artful courtship, they seem to yearn for something like sympathy and consent. They will not desist until their passion is satiated, and they have drained the very life of the coveted victim. Is that what I was, my darling? A coveted victim? Or was it, perhaps, truly love? Would you have drained the life from me, loving me as you once said, through death and beyond? In other cases, he says, ordinary cases, it, the vampire, goes direct to its object, overpowers with violence, strangles and exhausts, often at a single feast. Like those poor peasants whose names you did not trouble to learn or remember. Like the swineherd's young wife, like the poor ranger's daughter, whose funeral hymn was so discordant to your ear. My father related to the Baron Wardenberg the story of the Moravian nobleman and the vampire he killed at Karnstein churchyard. And then he asked the Baron how he had discovered the exact position of the long-concealed tomb of the Countess Mircalla. The Baron's grotesque features puckered up into a mysterious smile. He said, "I have many journals, many papers written by that remarkable man. He writes of the visit of which you speak to Karnstein. Tradition, of course, distorts the tale. He was indeed a nobleman, and had been living in Moravia, but he was in truth a native of Styria. In very early youth he was a passionate and favoured lover of the beautiful Mircalla, Countess Karnstein." Do you perhaps remember him, sweetest? Her early death plunged him into inconsolable grief. Of course it would. Of course. even as I grieve over you." "How do vampires come about?" he is asked. "A truly wicked man puts an end to himself. Such a suicide, under certain circumstances, becomes a vampire. That spectre visits living people in their slumbers. They die, and almost invariably in the grave become vampires. This happened in the case of the beautiful Mircalla, who was haunted by one of those demons." "Even he must recognize your beauty and your innocence." "My ancestor," he said, "discovered this. He knew that suspicion of vampirism would fall sooner or later upon the dead countess, who in life had been his idol. He conceived a horror, be she what she might, of her remains being profaned by the outrage of a posthumous execution. And he resolved to save his once beloved Mircalla from this. He journeyed here, killed the vampire of which you speak, pretended to remove the countess's remains, and obliterated her monument." When he grew old, he looked back upon what he had done, and a horror took possession of him. It was he who made the tracings and notes which guided the Baron to the very spot. And he drew up a full confession of the deception that he had practiced. If he intended any further action, death prevented him, and the hand of a remote descendant, too late for many, directed the pursuit to the lair of the beast. I listen quietly. I do not care to hear you called a beast. This man is wise, learned, but he did not know you as I did. He would never know you as I did. In the following spring, the spring after your final death, my father took me on a tour through Italy. We remained away for more than a year. He likes to tell everyone that I am well, completely recovered. But we both know that is not true. It was a long time before the terror subsided. To this hour, the image of my sweet Carmilla returns, sometimes the playful, languid, beautiful girl, sometimes the writhing fiend I saw in the ruined church. And often from a reverie I have started, my darling, fancying I hear your light step at the drawing-room door.